As with week 20 of 260 Minutes, week 21, which I'm about to record, is also kind of a departure for me. Certainly not as extreme of one that I did last week, but tonight it's all about the story of form on long-form joke. It is for a spoken word comedy room, so it's a little bit different than I normally do. I did one kind of like this on week 11, I think, over at Comedy Monday Night. It went okay. I do not have as much faith about this, as I think I might have gone too far trying to embrace the theme and the voice, and it might not be something I'm suited for, but we'll see how it goes. It's kind of about that. It's a coming-of-age story, which I hear is one of like 3 types of stories, so I went for the big ones. I read once that Socrates said that the unexamined life was not worth living, which sounds really great on paper, but have you ever tried it? It is an awful thing to do. Like, when I was examining my life, trying to find a story for tonight, I realized that I lead a very boring life. I could barely find anything. Most of my stories end with, all right, I'll see you guys later. That is my life in a nutshell. But in thinking about this, I actually realized that my biggest fear in life is missing out on something. Even as a kid, I remembered like wanting to stay up later at night, not to like stay up and watch television. I was just afraid I was going to miss some little tidbit of conversation. So I'd like try to bone in on my parents' card games or something, like try to see what was going on, which is why to this day I hate card games, because nothing ever happens in a card game. There's gossip about people I don't know. The worst point in this kind of that this fear had, or this worry had, was right after high school, because all of my friends went off to these great adventures. They went traveling into university, and I told my parents that I wanted to be a comedian, and I would have rather told them that I was gay. Because that conversation is much easier to have, because there's like a societal standard for that conversation where they still have to love you. But they do not have to love you if you're still a comedian. It happens the same way too. Like, Mom, Dad, I want to be a comedian. Oh, have you ever tried not being a comedian? You're some non-comedy types. I camouflaged it for a while by calling it entrepreneurship. That lasted about a month. No, dick jokes are a business. Yeah, sure they are. It actually took a few years, but my dad, they're on board now, and they were always, fairly supportive. But my dad leaned into me 3 years into my career, and said, well, yeah, when you worked for free, that was just basically your university. I was like, oh, thanks for coming on board with that. I did work for like 3 months for free for the local comedy club, and I realized at the time, I thought like, oh, that's because they don't, that's how it happens. When you're new, you don't get paid. What in actual fact was happening was they didn't have any money. Because if they had money, they would have prevented their bathroom from smelling like a sewer, which they also did not do. So when the time came up to have an adventure and have kind of this kind of finding myself experience, it was with my best friend, Steve, whose name has remained the same for this story, because everybody knows it's him anyways, so it doesn't really matter. And he's had more of those adventures than anybody. Like I realized over time that I didn't miss out on anything, ultimately, like his travels. Well, one thing, he had an orgy once. Yeah, that I kind of get torn up about every day. But he reminds me of it too, like every other day. And I kind of blame him. Like, I started counting days in between he would like tell me, and I've never hit 30. But that's a bigger man than I, because if that was my story, I'd have it in my introduction. Like, instead of, oh, this is Donovan, he's a comedian, it would be, oh, this is Donovan, he once slept with more than 3 people. So anyway, Steve was going up to school at some acting school in Vancouver. Great life decisions being made here. And so we're going out, we figure we should road trip and we should go surfing, so we figure what the heck, let's do that. So we're in his car, because I'm going to fly back. And it's a tiny little Volkswagen, so I'm cramped up. I'm 6'3", like I'm not comfortable in this thing. The tape machine doesn't work at all. We have no music except for literally 14-hour drive to Vancouver. The only thing we have is Beastie Boys. The entire way. To this day, when I hear brass monkey, my spine still like gets sore. I'm like, oh, it's happening again. On the road trip out, he actually decides to take the windier road through Whistler. I think because he wanted to turn the wheel more. That was fun for him. I didn't understand why. That's one part of my brain that doesn't work that way. I was like, we could have got there faster and had booze and sleep, but no. Apparently, this was fun. So we finally arrive in Vancouver. He is basically breaking into a sweat. I've never heard a grown man grunt while parallel parking. It was a very weird experience to have. He's like, and we're like, oh, that's kind of weird. Anyways, we go there. We're at the ferry terminal the next day, and we decide, oh, maybe there's a problem with the car. So we pop the hood to find out that the power steering reservoir is bone dry. Nothing in there. And this is the true difference between wisdom and knowledge, because our thought wasn't, why is it empty? Our thought was, we should buy some more fluid for this in Nanaimo when we get there. Poor choice. So we get to Nanaimo and we buy the fluid and we pour it in, and we hear a sound that is not a stranger to next to a vehicle. But normally you only hear this after you've had the really big coffee on a long road trip and you have to pull over. The fluid is just pouring unhindered by anything right out of the bottom of the car. We realize, well, this is a problem, but we're not going to stop our surfing trip for it. So we get into Nanaimo, and we're trying to find it, like, we're trying to fix it with duct tape, again, very not wise. And there was actually a guy that came up to us when we were trying to fix this. Everything's closed, by the way. It was only like, 6 o'clock at night. And this guy comes up to us, this old grizzled guy, and to this day, I believe that somewhere this footage exists on like a hidden camera show of us using his suggestion, because he comes up and he goes, hey, you guys should try hot glue. So we did, and that's why I think it exists somewhere, because I can't imagine. It was wet and it was horrible. We finally get as far as Port Alberni. We managed to get a hotel room that night. It's just not working. But we do get to Tofino. Now, what we're doing is pulling over every hour to refill the tank. And it's just leaking out along the way. But we wanted to go surfing. So we finally get to Tofino, we go surfing. I'm still expecting to have some big, revelation about myself. Hasn't happened yet. I figure, oh, maybe the waves will do it to me. But what made me just miserable the entire day is a wetsuit. If you ever want to punish me for something, put me in a wetsuit. They are disgusting, hideous. First of all, not pleasing. They show every bump and every wrinkle. Second of all, there's so much trouble to get on, I did not take it off when I had to go to the bathroom. Yeah, so now I'm in the ocean, in my own urine. It was warmer, okay? It was May. I do not hate myself for making that decision. So there we are, we're in the ocean. He is surfing fine. I am just using seawater to irrigate my nasal cavity. I haven't had a cold in 6 years. It's fantastic. It just brined me up right on the inside. It was great. So we do the surfing thing, we do the camping thing, still haven't had any big revelation. We finally decide to head back to Victoria. I gotta fly out of there. We get to Victoria, can't find accommodation, so we find this old hostel type thing. And there is a super cute girl working behind the counter. And we're flirting with her, and both of us are flirting with her. And I'm like, oh, maybe this orgy's gonna happen. It's a possibility, you know? And so we say, like, I actually brought with me down on this trip a special chocolate beer that Big Rock Brewery and Bernard Callebaut teamed up with, and it was like going to be this like big triumphant, and we're like, oh, we'll share it with this girl, that's great. So then she goes and calls, oh yeah, it worked really well. And then she goes and talks to her roommate, and she says, the best compliment I've ever been paid. She says, oh, hey, there's these two Mondo hotties here. On the surface, very flattering, because I've never been called that before. I get handsome a lot, but I also know that what that translates to for women is not ugly. Handsome for a woman is just her saying, ah, he's passing. Yeah, like, it's a C-. I've become comfortable with that. So anyways, we come downstairs, and she's had her friend over. Her friend, we think everything's fine. Her friend comes in and leaves the car running in sight of the glass window as we're drinking this chocolate beer. So we have the chocolate beer, we down it. I don't know if you've ever had chocolate beer, but it is the first time in my life, the only time in my life, that I've ever understood the expression, shit-eating grin. Because I hated it, but I didn't want her to know how awful it was. So I'm still smiling and suppressing a gag reflex, I hear. So her friend then says, oh, we got to do laundry, and they take off. Perfectly plausible excuse. Steve and I go back up to our room, and Obviously no orgy. And we'd be like, oh, that went well. I guess they just had chores to do or something. So the next day, as I pull into the airport, Steve's driving, because it was a standard car as well. And even to this day, I can't drive a standard. And I'd rather tell you that I was a virgin. Like, there's so much shame about that. Like, really, were there no cars where you grew up? So he's pulling in there. He's sweating buckets because the steering fluid is empty. And I have two realizations. I have one that maybe finding yourself and figuring that stuff out isn't so much about actually finding yourself as it is stopping listening to everybody else that's talking to you about it. And number two, that Mondo Hottie was probably their code word for get me the fuck out of here. So the unexamined life is worth leading. Fuck you, Socrates. It's not fair at all. It's like, yeah, let's stand in front of it. Is this mine? Alright, that's better.
Can everyone hear what this person is saying?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, not Donovan specifically, just this person.
One of the Brent Constantine players.
Can we agree to that name before the show? Does anyone have any questions about Donovan's story? Does anyone have, because I have a lot of questions about this story. It seemed like you kept saying, and then everything you say, I just have another question. So,
bring it up.
Okay, here's the first thing I wrote down. Like the old man told you to fix your. Why did you have a hot glue gun? Were you going to a crafting convention? Why was that in your car? Why did you
That
just
is
have?
a good question. I think we bought it. No, 7-Eleven sells hot glue guns. Yes, I remember because we actually bought it. We found the only open kind of convenience store, and there was a carnival going on at the same time. So there was like a Ferris wheel in the background, and we're hot glue gunning a Volkswagen. I'm not saying it was a smart idea.
What town did you go to? The Carnival Crafting Championships were going on.
Nanaimo.
And what's in?
Yeah, it was their third annual.
You got to Nanaimo?
Well, we got all the way to Tofino.
Okay.
It just took a lot of muscle.
Okay. Has anyone gone to 7-Eleven recently? They have just like a construction paper and
crazy glue at the very least. You've seen crazy glue.
No, I've seen but it just hot glue guns and then the hot glue. It just seems like
it was miniature. It wasn't very big.
That 7-Eleven is out of business right now. I can guarantee. This hot glue is going to sell. It's going to put Nanaimo 7-Eleven on the map. Yes.
How did you plug the hot glue gun in?
Good question. We had the converter because we also had our laptops out there with us. So yeah, it took a lot. We had to pull it through the we had to roll down the window and pull it around because we didn't have enough cord length to get in there. Wow, I never even thought of that.
And it was just it wasn't like a special glue gun plug, right?
No, it wasn't like an adapt. It wasn't like getting a European plug and we had to connect it there.
You have a question?
You got that orgy yet, buddy?
No, I'm sorry. I'll one day. I'll tweet that. Yeah.
I'll RT that.
Yes.
I just had I was a little bit confused at the beginning of the story when you would interrupt your parents' card games. What was the verb you used?
A bone in.
For the untrained ear, could you maybe explain that? You don't go to libraries that often.
The explanation is that Brent is pushing the liquor on everybody, including performers. Yeah, I know. I was distracted by that for a good 3 minutes in my head. I was like, somebody's going to call me on it, and then, thank you. Absolutely you did.
Any more questions, all guys? Donovan Deschner!
We got no less than 5 emails from local comics saying I wasn't dark and dirty enough for tonight. So I've prepared something for you all, and you can be the judge. Well, I think that went pretty well. Certainly could stand to be a little punchier. In fact, somebody actually already texted me a punch-up for one of the bits on it. I did like that I kind of embraced the structure and went for it and kept the story together, even though there was kind of a lot of tangent things. I really like that structure of coming back to one's kind of spine and then getting distracted in different directions. I think it went well. I got a couple good compliments, and I'm kind of pleased with that. I hope I can do it again sometime.